Alex, what are you going to talk to us about?
We're going to talk about blood flow autoregulation to organs, in particular the kidneys, particularly how that relates to the kind of various arbitrary endpoints that we choose for mean arterial pressure in intensive care patients. So if you look at the way that blood flow, let's call it V dot, and pressure, let's call it pressure, relate, you'll find that most organs do a thing where at a certain range of pressures, fairly broad, something like between 65 to 150, the blood flow to those organs is fairly stable, and it's because they adjust the various microcirculatory things that they do with the very, very small vessels where your vascular resistance happens, the arterioles. Those organs will generally manage their own blood flow within that range of pressures, and this begins to deteriorate only at very low blood pressures, in which case the flow does diminish and the organ becomes hypoperfused and end up having all kinds of end organ damage. So, for example, for the kidneys, that's roughly between sort of 50 and 65, which is why kind of we feel that a map of 65 seems like the bare minimum to maintain in an intensive care patient, because you don't want the kidneys to fail and have to dialyze them. Ultimately, though, that's actually very individual, because a lot of people will have very different curves. This is not obviously representative of every person in the population. People who are, for example, hypertensive will have a more linear relationship where the plateau is higher. And so the theory is that you might even want to aim for a higher pressure in those people than you do in normal population. And of course, the more you push the blood pressure, the more this autoregulation becomes deranged again. And so if the mean arterial pressure is pushed really high, for example, if you are intentionally making the patient hypertensive to, for example, perfuse their brain because they've had a subarachnoid hemorrhage and that will bleed into the CSF, to prevent vasospasm, you sometimes need to push the map higher. And so in that scenario, autoregulation again breaks down, and so blood flow again becomes uncontrolled and begins to increase in proportion linearly with the blood pressure, which in the case of the kidneys produces the kind of torrential diuresis that you see in subarachnoid hemorrhage patients.